Okay,
Everybody's here. Yeah.
everyone's in?
Yeah, and I think we'll keep rolling people in as they get here.
Okay, great. All right, well then let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. My name is Devon Deimler, and I am co-curator along with the other person you see spotlit here, the lovely Heidi Gustafson. And we are co-curators of the exhibit that we're here to celebrate and elaborate, Feeding the Unseen Remediations of Earth. So on behalf of both of us, I am here to welcome you in and thank you all for coming. Thank you especially to our artists who are present, who this event is really about. And a special thank you to PRS and especially Kelly Carmena, Deputy Executive Director and Librarian at PRS. And I have to give credit again to Kelly for originally sparking this interest in a show about artists who use Earth in some way. And inviting me and Heidi to curate that. So this exhibit is obviously a lot about the earth, the carnal, material, and metaphysical, metaphorical imagination and experience of earth in all its living bodies, colors, ancestors, futures, what is deep below the earth and what is maybe even beyond it in relationship to earth. And what that also means, this is a segue, is that this show is inherently also a lot about place. The real deal places that we live in and live through, the soil of our homes, our farms, our factories, and also the way that places live in us, even if we're not literally on them at the moment, in memories, dreams, grief, and in efforts to remediate all kinds of toxic things. So I want to take just a few minutes to honor the place that our exhibit lives at, which is the Philosophical Research Society, who is, of course, hosting this event. Today, we're all on the Zoomy ether, but the actual exhibit lives at the Hansel Gallery through the end of the month, located at PRS. So if you are able to come see it, please do. So a bit about PRS. PRS is a nonprofit institution founded in 1934 by very prolific author and scholar Manly Palmer Hall. And it was founded as a repository for multicultural wisdom sources and a center for learning. So ever since then, for 90 years, PRS has continuously provided public programs on practical and profound wisdom. And I think anything to do with the earth very much fits that category. PRS has a very active events calendar, all kinds of topics and all kinds of formats. So I encourage you to visit prs.org/events to see what's going on this month and in the future. And the campus is also a very multi-dimensional place in itself, which fits the scope of its offering. So it has an auditorium, the gallery, a really wonderful bookstore where I buy all gifts that I give, and an incredible library of over 30,000 volumes, primarily from Manly Hall's own collection. So PRS is also available even if you don't live in LA. Such as events like this. A lot of events have a live stream component. There's an online journal, there's an online school, and so on. But if you are in LA, visiting or living in LA, please come check it out and be a part of the community. So it's been my gift to be one of PRS's contributing artists this year. I count it as one of my ancestors, and I'm very grateful that this exhibit gets to live there. It's a very, very fitting home. So to transition us into our panel, I'm going to read the description of the exhibit, and then I'll let Heidi really take over the emceeing of the event. Heidi is one of our featured artists as well, and it was really her community and her field that a lot of this exhibit was curated from, by her relationships and her interest in artists. So I really need to shout her out for that and shout out her recent book, Book of Earth, which is a very beautiful thing. So please look that up if you don't already know it. Okay. Feeding the Unseen, Remediations of Earth. Spiritually charged rocks, soil, metal, and pigment. intimate acts of alchemy, renewed cultural practices, remediations of earth with earth, elemental magic. The artists of Feeding the Unseen critically engage the metamorphic gravity of living on a mortal planet. Viewers are invited to witness and absorb artworks that transmute and transform lost, traumatized, or toxic matters. A hermetically sealed weapon slowly dissolving into black ink by alchemist Thomas Little. A film of Maori artist Sarah Hudson as she becomes rocks in all forms. A sacred drawing in blood by samurai descendant Yuri Shimojo in collaboration with ink maker Jason Logan. A heart-centered sculpture made with ritual white dirt by East African artist Valerie Periano. An honorific riprap from nuclear containment sites by geochemist Dr. Morgan Williams. An empowering Tibetan Buddhist treasure vase from His Holiness, Heidi will pronounce this properly, Dudjom Rinpoche's lineage by Treasure of Abundance, and other potent and auspicious offerings. Works by Camus Logue, Sarah Hudson, Valerie Pirano, Onya McCausland, Charles Simmons and Rudy Burkhart, Yuri Shimojo, Jason Logan, Kelley O'Leary, Morgan Williams, Treasure of Abundance, Alana Siegel, Mario Garcia, Marilú Ríos Guerrero, Heidi Gustafson, Thomas Little, and Dylan K. de Rolfs. I hope I'm pronouncing that okay. Tilke Elkins and Wild Pigment Project, Corwin Fergus, and my dad, Charles Deimler. So Heidi, over to you.
Well, that was rad. Thank you for the introduction. Thank you to PRS for hosting this event and allowing the artists in this exhibition to come together for a little bit, some of them, and also for us to just have space to share some of this incredible work. I feel really honored that we were able to bring so many beautiful, intimate pieces into this space and into this show. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and get into some of the images and into some of the artists' work. So Devon gave the introduction. The main vision is really about how artists are working with the earth as a medicinal force in a way, I would say, or as an energetic presence. So I'm going to let them sort of describe the work that is in the show from each of them. And then I think we'll start exploring some of the themes that come up within the pieces that kind of arise in this moment, but also that I'm really curious about hearing from each of the artists. So I'm going to kind of take you into the show now. And this is when you walk in the door into the show, you first see this incredible, huge film playing that has this very enchanting sound. You can't quite make out what's happening. Maybe like rain, maybe like far away rocks talking. And it's the film by Sarah Hudson that kind of welcomes you into the space, along with that central treasure vase below her. And then and the flanking objects below her are sort of like little beings of earth that we'll get into by Kelley O'Leary and Mario Garcia. And so what you don't see here is the first artist that I'm going to invite to speak about their work, who also is a treasure vase maker. And her treasure vase is very small. And if you were to turn around here and look out the front door that you walk in, above the door is her artwork. That's sort of the guardian of this place. And so with that, I want Alana Siegel to come on here and say hi. Tell us about your piece and what we're looking at.
Can you hear me?
And introduce yourself and say where you're from today and anything else you'd like to tell us about where your heart's at.
Okay. My name is Alana, and I'm speaking from New Kingston, New York, which is in upstate New York in the Catskills. And at the time when I made the treasure vase, the one that is on probably the left of your screen right now, I was in the Santa Cruz Mountains in California in a traditional 3-year, 3-month, and 3-day retreat. And it's interesting for me to speak about my artistic practice in the context, or myself as an artist in the context of making this treasure vase, because I usually would speak about myself as an artist in terms of being a poet or in terms of being a director or photographer. So this particular request installs me in a very particular realm of my connection to making and to connecting to the energies of Earth. And this is something that I really feel like I learned from Heidi, of the importance of understanding your creative participation in pre-existing spiritual lineages, rather than a sheer acceptance of methods or procedures that are telling you how to do things a certain way. Being able to sort of have this X-ray vision of seeing how, if you're inheriting a way of doing something, how that doesn't negate your own creative participation in the act and the honoring of that mode. And that's very specific to the making of the treasure vase, which was in the retreat that I was in. We were introduced to many different practices and modes of making. And this particular practice of the treasure vase, which is connected to a Chondro Norla deity practice, was one that I felt particularly resonant with. And I think that in Buddhism, there's this maxim that says that there are limitless teachings for limitless dispositions. And I was saying to a friend the other day how it's so difficult for me to just drink water, that I've over time designed like the most scintillating water bottles to make myself drink water, with like a green bottle with pearls and jewels to attract myself to the bottle. And I'm very aware that my natural inclination is towards visually scintillating things, but then not in a shallow respect that's initially what draws me. But what the treasure vase really grounds is that what you might see in, say, a carnelian or amethyst or jade that excites your senses, that completely draws you into the material realm, is on one level a support towards an inner spiritual blazing, but at the same time the spiritual blazing is also a support of the material. So there's this reciprocity of what we can find in the earth and then what we can undergo internally, and internally thus completely physically. Anyhow, I don't want to speak too long. I feel like there's a lot that I could say about the process itself, but I'm so excited and interested in all of the different artists who are here, and yeah, there's much more I could say about earth empathy, but we'll get to that when the time is right.
Thanks, Alana. Will you do one favor for me and maybe give a tiny taste of what materials are contained in these vessels?
Yeah. So I had to review the list of what's in here. Something that is standard to treasure vases is that there are different materials that are representative of the 6 realms in Buddhism. And so you have stones such as turquoise or pyrite, and those correspond to different realms or spaces of being. And then you also have collections of water from the great oceans, and you also have the things such as like healing aspects of like neroli oil, nutmeg oil, clove oil. There were additional from different Buddhist empowerments. There were like ashes from, you know, like they're very specific things to different practices that are included here. And one thing I just wanted to say was that there's also a traditional substance pilgrimage that people can go on to collect different substances from different holy sites around Nepal or Bhutan, and then collect them for the purpose of making such things as a treasure vase.
Thank you. Yeah. There's so much contained in these, but I'm going to keep going through so other artists will get a moment. Thank you, Alana. That was beautiful. So just to take us rotating, there's a this is a long show in a box, sort of. So on one wing, we're looking towards, we have a piece on the wall, some piece on the floor, and then in that far little column over there, we have a really special piece from Devon's father, Charles Deimler, Chuck, as we know him. And this is just like another valence of how we're connecting to land and to earth. So Chuck, tell us about what we're looking at.
Well, thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Devon. What you're looking at is harvested clay off our farm. So we have a 123-acre farm. My wife, Holly, and me bought the farm about 15 years ago. And we renovated the farm to a different type of farming, which is rotational grazing, organic. And we remediated the farm mostly by removing invasive and noxious weeds and replacing them with thousands of plantings of native Pennsylvania trees and shrubs and berries, and started gardens and orchards. And we have 4 streams on the property, so protecting the streams was of high value to us. So recently we just had a farm tour, and different agencies of the state were here, USDA and DCNR, Western Pennsylvania Conservatory, Conservation, Department of Conservation was here. And we did a farm tour, and we've kind of been recognized as a model of the way to farm. So when you're farming and you're doing work like we do, you're always digging holes. And when you're digging holes, you're finding clay and different veins of clay. And I started saving the clay. And I've been doing pottery, and my wife Holly was doing pottery too. But I've been doing pottery for about 3 years now, using commercial clays and commercial glazes, you know. So I wanted to do something with our own clay here on the farm. So Devon, my daughter, was a catalyst for it, because the remediation of the earth, it's just a precious statement to me, to us. And so my pieces aren't beautiful, but they're the first attempt of making pottery harvested off of our farm. And there's a lot for us to learn yet, grout ratios, blending clays, whatever. So we had some successes, but Devon could tell you she's got hands-on with the wild clay too. There's a lot of failures too, because when you're buying factory clay, commercial clay, it is made for its elasticity and to be user-friendly, and to be able to, in the case of a lot of potters, they're actually mass producing 50 mugs that all look the same. And that's how a lot of them sell. I'm more of a one-of-a-kind guy. I just like making the pot is one thing, but carving it is the precious part to me. And then I didn't really get a chance to work with clays and stuff like that. But this shows, like I said, it was a big catalyst for me to finally make my dream come true with Devon's assist. So I love her for that. And we hope you have another show in about 5 years, and I'll get to show off better, more majestic pieces at some point. So we're just farmers making clay pots. That's
Amazing.
Thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I just love the way that you've tended the land in so many different degrees, and that this gives us a little bit of insight of also we get to see this degree of interaction through the particle sizes, which is such an important part of other Earth.
Oh yeah, well, thank you for that. Yeah.
I love that.
That was I thought that was important to try to show that. And Heidi, if you're ever in Pennsylvania, stop by.
I'm going, I bought your pot that's here, so that's living with me. So, yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to point out, so yeah, what you're looking at here are is the process with the wild clay on top, and then for contrast, there's some commercial clay in the center.
Right.
And my dad always signs things with these faces that are sort of his own profile, so I kind of love that too as a way of personifying the wild clay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Devon.
Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome.
Okay.
You may move on to your next guest.
Okay.
There we go. So rotating back, and is Kelley here? Did she end up joining? Kelley, are you here? No? Okay. So below this treasure vase are these two. I'm just going to describe them very briefly. This is Kelley O'Leary's work. On the left is all clay that she's also gathered from land, but these are from land that are underneath server farms of Facebook, Google, and a few other places. And so, and Apple's main server farm, like places in the American West. And she works with these clays gathered from those sites. And she's also on the right working with the remains of cell phones and various other technology pieces that are extracted for the entire technological landscape. And she works with them and uses borax to kind of reprocess these remainders, these wastes from technology. So I think it's another layer of how one is exploring the farms of our culture. There's a little bit of close-ups. You can kind of see the circuitry that's being remediated by the borax there. And then now we're gonna go down into the south with Marilú, who has this incredible film. I'm just gonna kind of flip between two images. These are her films on the top above another film that's in the show by Charles Simmons and Pete Burkhart, just so you get a sense of what we're looking at. But she will describe her work, where you are. Hi.
Hello. I like a lot the way that you put the video with the other image, because I think that they are talking like between them, and I like that. Well, yes, I'm from Mexico City. I'm Marilú Ríos, and I am living in this moment of my life also in Mexico City as well. Mostly like the work that I do, I connect like nature and the inks and pigments of nature with healing process and meditating process as well. But in this piece, in specifically, I did it because it's in my neighborhood, and it's the park that is close to my house. And in that area, we have, I don't know if it is the correct word. We have a path for runners made of tepetate. It's that red soil. I don't know if you know that material, but the government say that they will put one of concrete, so they will take out the soil and put concrete instead of the petate. So a lot of neighborhoods and I like didn't want it because it was really unnecessary. But the reason to make that was only like to justify expenses, like only but that reason. So we was like against of that, but we lose that fight. And when I was walking through the park, one day I saw that they were like digging already and making all to put that concrete pad. So I tried to when they did that, I was able to see the layers of soil that are under that tepetate, like, and I get in contact with the colors and the materials and the texture, and also they bring a lot of rocks to put under the concrete as well. So I was passing through and I said, oh, like I would like to make something here, like just trying to make a memory of what is happening. That I believe that this happened not only in Mexico or in my neighborhoods, that it's very common all around the world, mostly, that governments or people put concrete over soil just because economic interest, like not getting like a pause to think if it's necessary or not, like only because it's something that they want to, only for their own benefit, without thinking about Earth. So for me, like this was like like kind of a ritual or something like that, like to connect with Earth of the place that I live, trying to connect with our ancestral memory also, like during all the process of making the pigment through rocks. And also I started like walking through this park and in this land, and with the pigment that I collect, I make paint, just like to have this memory there. And I like to show the images also like in a contemplative way, like with a very close-ups that of the colors of the land, that probably at the beginning you probably don't know where exactly it happens, but if it is a city or if it's, I don't know, like a forest or whatever. But then I open this the view and you can see like the cars passing through, and also the concrete of the street. And also it's kind of like a reflection of how we are like constructing ourselves as like as a civilization, like what ideas or what we are doing as a human species in this like kind of idea or goal to go forward, like it's good to go forward, yes, but we are putting concrete without reasons, like over the earth, like that probably is not necessary. So I make this and this kind of performance and painting just like to think about that, like what we are doing, and try also to honor the land that we are living. And that's it mainly. Thank you.
Yeah, it's beautiful film that you offered, and I don't have I wish I had the image of the final circle that you had put all the pigments on, which I don't here, but I will send to everybody or put it up on the website afterwards. But I love what's amazing about what you were just saying is that I hadn't quite made this connection to the piece. This film that's playing below yours is from the 70s. Charles Simmons and Rudy Burkhardt made this, and what happens in that piece is that he is covering his body with clay, but then building a little city on top of his body. So it's a similar conversation, but in a different way, which I hadn't quite realized in terms of how you're relating to civilization and the construction that's happening on the surface of the earth or becoming the surface of the earth. And it's just, your film is very beautiful. And it's also available online, right? For people who can't come to the show, or if you're interested, you can look up Marilú's website, which you will also be able to see this film and watch it, and also other films you've made, right? So it's available to the global public too, which I love. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then so the films are kind of playing on one wall, and if you turn just a little bit, you start entering into this other world, just as intimate. But this is Yuri Shimojo's work, along with ink maker Jason Logan and Rudy Shimojo. So Yuri, I'm going to let you maybe start it off, and then Jason maybe chime in.
Hello. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Do you hear? Okay, good. So I am Yuri Shimojo. I am Japanese from Tokyo, but living in New York and Hawaii for many, many, many years. And now I am saying hello from Japan. It's sun is just up. So it's like a 4:30 a.m. here. I am a little north from Tokyo, and I'm in the quest of ancestral land. I'm going to visit my samurai lineage, Aizu clan, which is part of Fukushima area, which is north from Tokyo. I am visiting there to search for my roots, because it's big part of my artwork, which is I lost entire family before I become 30 years old, and which is a long time ago. But I have been living, believing in invisible sort of the other side of the boundary, which is spirits. And because all my families are the spirits most of my life. So this invitation from Heidi, this show was just perfect for my life, which is the main your communication, the connection with this invisible spiritual force and unspoken languages and so on. So this is the piece I call Unbroken Line, which is this. If you look at this painting closely, this is made of just one single line. I was painting one line, back and forth. Of course, not all at once, but this is made of one unbroken line, so a connected line, and made of my dog, my soul dog, Rudy. Rudy just passed this February, so now he is also another spirit who guided me. And he had blue eyes because of his eye issue. And I was invited to be part of this documentary film, Color of Ink, of Jason Logan. And when I was invited to be part of this movie, I received the special ink that Jason made, but at the same time, just happened to be, I was diagnosed breast cancer. And also my dog Rudy had diagnosed cancer right before me. So both of us were challenging the sort of facing to the time of the life that we have. And so I asked Jason this crazy idea, which is because he can make ink from anything. So I asked him, would you be possible to make ink with dog's blood serum? And also the saline water, which is going to be the part of my body after mastectomy. And Jason thrilled my idea, fortunately, and he made this incredible ink with Rudy's real blood serum and saline water and other magic, which Jason will talk about it later. So my purpose was using this ink, this special medicinal ink. I wanted to just think nothing but keep painting a line, continuous line for prayer of life, appreciation, and connection of everything with my life, with Rudy, the people, all this bond that I have appreciated all my life. So this whole process became part of this movie. I mean, it appeared in the movie The Color of Ink, which I still haven't seen. But Heidi is, of course, in this movie, and the other people in this group are in this movie. And that's how I was connected to this amazing part of the family. And here I am today. Is it enough? Okay.
Yeah. And I think maybe what I also love about this piece is that you are here.
Yeah, and then this is Rudy. Before I came this trip, because I'm on the 4 months traveling in Japan, my friend Metal Smith made this pendant, the amulet protection of Rudy's ash and silver. And she said the shape just happened to be, the heart shape just appeared. So I believe Rudy's force is still very strong, and I think he's joining in this Zoom talk right now too.
Thank you, Rudy, for being here as well. I love that. I want to let Jason, would you like to say a little bit more about your contribution and your ink making ink from anything process and everything, and where you're, and I only have the photograph of this and this. It's part of your contribution, so say what you will.
Sure. Well, I'm coming in from Canada. I'm a couple hours north of Toronto and kind of in the middle of a rainstorm. And there's a beautiful like cliffs of limestone behind me, but you can't really see it. But I don't know, it started like as a simple commission. I make ink for artists all around the world, and I do like to make ink out of almost anything. And as part of this documentary film I was involved with, the director got really interested in Yuri's work, and she has this other beautiful series involving like cherry petals. So we thought like, oh, maybe I'll just send some really interesting pink ink to Yuri. And that was kind of going to be the end of it. And then it just set off a chain of events that included, a sort of deep dive into the world of like blood activated color. And I mean, if you see in the picture, it says Rudy Blue 2, but the first Rudy Blue was made before I'd met Rudy and before I'd met Yuri. And it was such a sort of extraordinary process to make it. I'd never before received, vials of blood via FedEx as an ingredient. And it was sort of like, it was almost like it included the blood, like the venom and the anti-venom in it. Like the blood itself was a kind of healing blood. And I don't know, there's like so many pieces to this. It's like a total adventure in a bottle. But I guess for now, I just maybe want to echo what like Alana said about that she sort of felt like installed by this work, like rather than that you're installing the work, that you yourself feel installed. And I just look at that little shelf and the picture of Rudy and the ink, and then this beautiful singular line that's like a whole lifetime, but inexplicable. It's just, I feel like my heart's still in that bottle on that little shelf, like it really was an experiment of, matter meeting meaning. Is that enough? There's also Prussian blue in there, which is like a ingredient that I'm totally fascinated by, but I feel like I could just take all day talking about this ink.
I think that's enough for now. I think there'll be more to say. I also was realizing looking at this that it feels like the ocean part of the earth part of the show too. It has that quality, when we say there's a lot of and a lot of people who have documented their dreams before dying, they often encounter an ocean as their way of relaxing their body before they go. And it's an amazing phenomenon that happens. And when I look at this, it's almost like I feel like I'm facing the ocean part of the earth. And I just love just sharing that now. That's what came up.
That saline, like I was using contact lens solution as my base, which is like, it's saline solution is the ocean, and it's for the eyes, and it's for the breasts, like I just feel like it's like salt water. What an extraordinary moving oceanic thing it is.
Yeah. Well, it's because when I asked, when I wanted to have this medicinal special ink for me, the idea of the implant after mastectomy, I felt so weird and scary. But if I think of saline water, yes, it's part of the ocean and part of my tears. And if I think that way, I could love my part of my new body. So I just cannot explain how this single ink helped me. Whole process saved me. Rudy and Jason and my sort of like a soul has met, and I'm still this whole process and this ink is going to save my rest of my life. And it's just it's not just the pigments, natural pigment and the special ink, which is different from what you can get from art material shop, but it's just this whole story and this continuous connection with you and this whole circle just bring me to this keep opening the doors. And yeah, it just saved me, healed me tremendously. I would be never able to explain by words.
Well, you did a damn good job just now, so thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm gonna just zoom out so you can kind of see where Rudy is situated in your piece. It's right next to another piece on the wall there and on the pedestal, and then to the far right, these two sort of looming creatures, beings, and Val's not able to be here to speak to these, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to these other very poignant beings in the show, which you can read about online. They're beautiful works. And also to the left of yours is another piece really exploring a very particular ancestral blue by Camus Log, and he's working with Vivianite from his ancestral Klamath territory. And then right in front of your piece is these amazing ground bright bicones by Tilke Elkins and others who are part of Wild Pigment Project. And then I just want to show what's been happening as people are invited to use or work with these pigment balls, bicones, on the wall and on this large rock that's next to them. So I'm going to let Tilke take it away. Tell us about this work and hi and where you are.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much, Heidi and Devon and PRS for having me here. It's a real honor to be here with all of these artists that I admire so much. And I am currently in Ogopoge, Owingeh, otherwise known as Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I am the founding director of Wild Pigment Project, and this piece is, I think of it as a collaborative piece between me and a group of artists who have been part of this project. So just in a nutshell, the project is a nexus point, a connection point for artists all over the world who are working with pigments. And a group of amazing artists have really generously donated pigment to this project that has been part of a kind of reciprocal cycle of exchange of pigment and energies where the artists have foraged for, gathered pigment, and sent that pigment to the project. And then those pigments have gone out to people who subscribe to the project, a subscription process called Ground Bright. And every month, one of these pigments goes out in the mail to about 300 subscribers all over the world in more than 15 countries. So in this show, these bicones, I like that term, are the shape that when I love to roll balls with clay, many of us who work with pigments, which are also clays, really can be made into clays by just adding water. These mostly just have water in them. And so when I roll balls, if I kind of relax my awareness, I find that often, because I have quite deep concaves in my palms, these bicones form instead of balls. So they feel like a kind of uniquely human shape to me. So yeah, I just wanted to, there are, I think, 13 or so, maybe a bit fewer artists whose pigments are featured in this piece, in this exhibit, which is these bicones that function as chalk, that they're resting on a piece of rusty metal that I found on a beach. And then they have a rock with them that is from the place where my studio is. And then there's this beautiful arch on the wall. This was kind of a collaboration with Heidi and Devon around how we could share these pieces. And to me, it really feels like it's another piece of the reciprocity cycle, because these contributed pigments then become modes of expression for people who are around them and kind of take this wordless expression of planet empathy and sensorium bliss with color and texture and smell and express them on the wall in this show. So that feels amazing to me. It feels like, like another step in this cycle. So in these pigments are from a group of artists, and I'm just going to read their names to thank them and acknowledge them. There's a beautiful pigment from Jamaica called Ancestral Brown, contributed by Lucille Jonquière. There is a gorgeous pale yellow Caldera Tough is the name. Every pigment is given a name by the artist, and then and then as part of that cycle, the artist requests that 22% of the proceeds from this Ground Bright subscription are returned to an organization that is part of land stewardship in the place where these pigments were from. So if you're interested in kind of seeing all of those places, I encourage you to go to wildpigmentproject.org and look under pigments, and you can read all these stories about the contributors and who the 22% is going to. So yeah, I'll just say the names just in the interest of time, but there's a beautiful green called Hillside Slough by Terry Power. There's a gorgeous ochre from Caroline Ross. There's Hosanna White's Basalt Blue. There's Daniela Naomi Molnar's Winterkill, Wandering Winterkill, which is a black. Sydney Matriciano has a pigment that's a sort of deep purple pink called Providence. Catalina Christensen has a soft purple from Colombia called Atabon Mag. These all have just amazing stories, so I really encourage you to look them up. Polina Sakova Teterists has a soft yellow called Zloto. And Dana Driscoll has an acid mine drainage iron. So it's from polluted waterways in Pennsylvania, where this iron has been settled out in drainage ponds, and that's called Tacoma ochre. And then Heidi has a pigment as well in this ball, a soft blue pigment, gray blue. So yeah, thank you, all of you artists. And as an artist, I work with pigments site specifically. So I enter a landscape with a paintbrush and make all the paintments in the paintments. I kind of like that, paintments. The pigments hyper locally in one place and paint on found wood, and then sort of offer the wood for sale to people, but offer the pigment as rent, and that rent money goes back to the land, and then at a certain time I come and wash that pigment off and return it to the place. So just seeing these pigments kind of moving through different forms and through different hands for me is all about connectivity and collectivity. And so yeah, I think that's all I need to say for now.
Thank you. And it's so wonderful to have this piece, knowing that it's almost like a microcosm to the community bound up in this one little archway. And it's an incredible tendril, both back to the artists and their land, but also into the hands of people who are in this space. And it's an incredible deep participatory dive that I'm so grateful is in this show. So thank you.
And I just wanted to add too quickly that then I just love how there's so much, so many phases of life to this project and so many hands in it, and touch of hand and palm of hand. It's really fun to see this image because it's been a minute since I've seen it. But then the idea is that we will try to collect any dust on the ground, as well, dust or whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It's kind of a dust. From the pigments as it fell to the ground when people were drawing, and that we might try to collect that as well and make another one.
Yeah, absolutely. And have that at least a representative of that collective dust go back to Heidi's Ochre Sanctuary to be there. Yeah, thank you, Devon, for completing that cycle.
And I love that it also kind of ties into Alana's treasure and the treasure vase, where there's a part of one of the things that's in that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Alana, but there are these kind of mother pills that are also rolled pieces of clay, several of them that are put in the vases. So it's almost like our mother pill that's going to be taken out of the vessel of this show, which I love.
Yeah, beautiful.
And then now I'm going to just switch to the other side of the show. There's also another archway, and this is using another toxic acid mine drainage paint pigment that is collected by Onya McCausland over in England. And she does it in a remediation process where she's gathering this pigment off the drainage and heating it up and processing it. And then we applied the pigment mixed with water from PRS's sink and applied it on the wall. So it's a little bit of a collaboration between us and this place where Onya is from and her pigment remediation too, as a kind of two contrasting arch portal niches, alcoves. And then below this on the ground there is a piece by Morgan Williams, who's an artist and a scientist. And these are all different earth materials that are used to bury nuclear waste in major nuclear waste depositional cells in America specifically. So this is the highest level technology that we have to protect ourselves from our own nuclear waste problems. And I'm not going to get into it because he wasn't able to be here today, but it's an incredible story, both of these pieces. And then if you kind of rotate back towards Charles Deimler's piece, next to his is this incredible remediating project too by Thomas Little, who I just wanted to show two different, this is a kind of a work in progress. On the left is when we first installed this piece at the beginning of June, and on the right is sort of what it's looking like today. So Thomas, tell us what we're looking at.
Well, I'm excited to see it, actually. It's doing some pretty wild stuff. I think, well, I mean, what's happening is right now, the image on the left is the fresh, where we first had our solution. I guess I should tell everyone what it is, right? So I dissolve firearms in sulfuric acid to produce iron sulfate. That is one of the quintessential ingredients in iron gall ink, which is a very traditional ink that's been used in the Western world for a long time, maybe a millennia or more. I dissolve handguns in acid. Actually, I do this all the time. This is sort of my business. So I'm dissolving. This is a Beretta, part of a Beretta. I dissolve these in sulfuric acid to make iron sulfate, which I then combine with a tannin compound, which is the bundles of plant matter in the back. That's sumac, which I have some fresh and green right here, currently curing. And then that, along with a little bit of gum, and that's that little crystally stuff in the cork jar, mix it together and you have ink, which is also right here, because I'm surrounded by this stuff all the time. So really what you're seeing is a slice of my work area. But I think it's cool. So what we did was we had the gun. This is a Smith & Wesson, by the way, revolver, partially dissolved in sulfuric acid. For this show, we redissolved the crystals in water to create this reaction that's going on in the other slide, which caused, I understand, a little bit of consternation among the folks at the gallery. I'm glad we cleared it up. And so there's not acid or fumes flying through the air or anything. So hooray. But what's happening now is we're developing a little bit of yellow iron oxide inside of the jar as the iron sulfate sort of breaks down and reacts and sort of becomes another pigment. I don't know, maybe it's I don't know if it's biogenic or not. It looks really it looks a lot like, to me, pond funk that comes down from the river I live next to, which, by the way, I'm live next to the Coharie River in North Carolina. And that's where I'm sort of talking from today in my studio. And the lovely little three-legged egg vessel, that is actually the completed ink. The vessel was made by a glass blower and sort of the vessel maker for a lot of alchemists, I hope. Dylan, he's a buddy, Dr. Bulb on Instagram, and he made this cute little three-legged alembic-like structure. We would talk a lot about the Orphic egg and sort of like that, you know, just classical digestive shape. But yeah, I don't know. Did I hit all the points?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful. I think just to describe it for someone who may have never seen one of these before, if you had let this weapon dissolve entirely in the sulfuric acid in your studio, it would eventually become mostly these crystalline iron sulfates, correct?
Yeah, it sort of becomes.
You just sort of put a little hiatus midway. Yeah, like
Yeah.
so we can show people the process as if they were able, like you said, get a portal into what is all involved in taking a gun down to liquid, into writing,
Yes.
drawing it, which is an incredible process.
Right, it makes this lovely iron sulfate's just, I don't know, I love iron sulfate. It's the basis for so many really cool. I make a lot of different I make pigments from iron. You make a lovely red, a magnetic black, you know, yellow, all these lovely Mars, the suite of Mars colors. But also just like your little, I'm gonna do a shameless product plug. This is my ink that I sell and make. But this is also, you know, the classic ink that, you know, was written you know, old documents, beautiful curving documents. You see this ink everywhere, all these old things. And I just love having that connection to that, you know, that magical potion that, you know, sort of like seeps and rides and vasculates through paper and the world. To talk a little bit about Earth and remediation, you know, I take, you know, guns are, well, I don't need to go too much about guns. I think most people understand that they're a big problem in this country. But the idea of Earth remediation, I sometimes talk about what I do as, I describe myself as an agent of accelerated entropy, where I want to bring things to rust, like bring the weapon to rust, return the weapon to Earth. But, you know, as a little side journey, it's going to be art or whatever, maybe sort of mark making material. But eventually that art is also going to become Earth, just because everything's going to become Earth again. I'm just sort of speeding up this little process, though. Like I'm a little bit of a, you know, little engine that's like breaking it down, a little digestive vessel myself. Yeah, that's what I do. There you go.
You're a little digestive yourself, a little digestive vessel yourself.
I am, especially now because I skipped lunch, so I might get my stomach growling.
Yeah, and I feel like it's also, there's this kind of real homage to the mystery in between that digestion is, like what, and metabolism, and allowing for that in this process is something that always has intrigued me, because it's not like a formulaic straightforward all the time. Lots of things can be dynamic and, I don't know, change. There's a lot inside of this. It's not just like entropy, just speeding up entropy. It's also adding, like you said, these layers of aesthetic beauty and mystery, and even like divinatory process.
Yeah, I like the, you know, I talk about ink and writing. You know, it's necromancy. I mean, that's sort of it's a magic that we use every day that has become so part of our daily lives we don't even really think about it. But it's like it's how the dead can speak to us. It's like a really powerful thing. But you know, it's sort of like, well, yeah, you're just talking like writing or ink or whatever. Yeah, but you know, it's so much more than that.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, definitely. All right, I'm gonna move on now. Oh, to if you are in the show, like, so Thomas is dissolving gun there, if you go just a little bit to the right, you see this circular kind of film canister holding all of these little bits. And I'm going to let Corwin tell us about this, who is just in the room next to me over there. And we have a train going by, so it might be a little bit loud for a moment, but
I just jumped up and closed the window. The
Yeah.
trains are. So yeah, Heidi and I are in Bellingham now, and my name's Corwin Fergus, and I get to live in the North Cascade region, and it's really my heart home. And then my actual homes are migratory, and I get to go back and forth between each side of the Cascades, which is about 3 hours to completely different ecosystems. The east side is much more intermountain west, quite arid, and just yesterday we came over for the first time in several weeks, and it's so beautifully maritime here, and the air's it's this really wonderful element of moisture to it, which we haven't had for a long time. So I would like to just say I'm really honored and honored to be amongst so many moving pieces in this show. I've been really impressed, particularly by the creator's relationship to material, how much of the work is primarily material driven. Heidi initially asked me to do a piece for this show, and I declined, just saying that my work wasn't materially based. I work creatively, mostly as a photographer and a filmmaker and a writer. And I certainly collect a lot of sticks and stones and bones and move them around and arrange them. But for me, that's kind of more of the play side of artwork, and has, sculptural things that I've done always, they don't, I guess for me, the sort of bellwether of important artwork is necessity, that you really have to do something. And so I kept, Heidi was gently persistent, and I said no a few times. And then she said, well, what about doing something with all those fingernail clippings you have? And I've been collecting my fingernail clippings and toenail clippings for over, I guess, a little over half a lifetime now. And so that notion kind of, it just stuck a little bit. And so I thought about it, and when I started collecting fingernail clippings, I did things with them and used them in pieces for maybe for a number of years. And then for at least a couple decades, I hadn't done anything with them. I just kept putting these things in film canisters until I filled up a 35 millimeter film canister, and then I'd fill up another one after a few more years, and kind of expected something to kind of reveal itself that might have to do with a lot of them. So anyway, I was thinking about one of the first things I ever did with them, which was to take small 35 millimeter film canisters, the old metal ones, and I would take 3 chopsticks and bind them together with thin wire and fill them half full of nail clippings. And I gave them to my nieces and nephews and godchildren as sort of Uncle Rattles, and so they could, or Godfather Rattles, that they could shake around and consult me if they ever wanted to. And surprisingly, not with all of them, but with quite a few of them, that really, caught on, and they really liked that. you know, and at the time, I'd been studying a lot of shamanism and oracles. It's kind of part of the sort of ancestral lineage of the kind of psychoanalysis I do. It's sort of, and anyway, so it occurred to me that I could put all these in a big film can, a 400 foot 16 millimeter film can that had been used for a really long time to store work that I'd really put a lot of my heart and soul into, had lived in these 16 millimeter film canisters. So that seemed like a good container for it. I think I did a little research and found out that eventually I decided to kind of sort of use them as an oracle visually, and so the term scrying is a kind of interesting term that I'd learned a while ago, and it's basically kind of like a Rorschach test where you pretty much use any material that isn't imagistic or isn't too uniform, and look into it and see what you see. And it occurred to me that in our contemporary culture, scrying really means seeing what is not there as an oracular method. And then it occurred to me that, and this was probably stimulated by discussions with Heidi and her critique on metaphor. And I'd always really embraced the metaphor as being like kind of really at, the heart of so much artwork, and had never really appreciated metaphor as, also part of the, I think, deep pathology of our culture, which requires something to be separate and other to be like something else. And so it occurred to me then that scrying in an animistic culture, instead of seeing something that wasn't there, means seeing something that is there. And I think that's really, for me, it's kind of, I think it's one of our most important challenges in our time is the reanimation of matter. And oracles we think of oracles very often, we think of runes or tarot cards or the I Ching, and originally even the I Ching, for instance, goes back to reading the shell of a tortoise, and many of the most ancient oracular methods are basically just handling the earth and letting the earth speak to us. So I put this thing together. I didn't think too much of it. The idea kind of came to me pretty quickly, and I tried it out on myself as an oracle, and it wasn't really working, and or I didn't have any immediate response to it. But it's kind of, and I won't tell this story, but because it's kind of long and involved and more personal. But it's only in the last few days that I've kind of realized how the matter has been of the Oracle has been working on my psyche, and particularly worked on my psyche a lot as I was making it. And yeah, I guess that's enough for now. Yeah.
Thank you. I really like hearing the whole backstory, all the details, and I also just like that at the end of the day, it's your human remains in a certain way. It's just these remainders, and I feel like I also just love that people may not know this, but our fingernails are a core pigment potential material. They're an earth material. You can work with them in all kinds of ways further than this, and I love that you've sort of left them just as they are, and there's a sheer earth human earth relationship here. And I think we're almost gonna be done with the artists that are here. This is just really quick for people who don't know my work in the show. I also have a little piece in the show, which is a book of earth pigments that are all gathered from my bioregion. And it's sort of the original book of earth, not the book that I wrote and made last month, but this is a kind of the origin story, which is working with these individual places that are all from where my soul is, kind of my fingers in my region. And that's what is in the show. You can feel it, you can touch it, you can move through the pages. And funny enough, some of the pages are bound with a binder that Logan made for me that smells incredible. And I think that's something we haven't really talked about in the show. There's a lot of materials that have a kind of unique multi-sensory engagement. They have funny smells, or they have an interesting texture, not just their visual presence. So yay, that's our artists. We got a little glimpse into everything in the show, and thank you so much everyone for sharing a little bit of your stories. And I think we have a little bit of time left now to maybe engage one another. I have a few threads that I could explore. Devon might have a few that she wants to explore, but I'm also wondering if there's any of the artists who spoke, if you felt like you wanted to further connect to other pieces, or if you started seeing some threads where you want to explore, since you haven't necessarily met each other or been able to engage, like see how your pieces are interacting. Is there anyone who, before we kind of dive into deeper themes of, I don't know, the meanings inside of this, is there anyone who just wants to talk to one of the other artists here? Does that feel like a good? And I'm going to take off my screen so we can all just be up here together. Let's give it a few. I'm thinking about, does anyone like to engage?
I had one small thing.
Yeah.
Just that, like, I kind of love the way you described walking through the space and just trying to allow the images to move you 360 degrees. But I just wanted to know, and I don't know who to ask this of, but like the space itself was this amazing little like church cave. Like, what was that space? Like, what was it?
Yeah, you were there. Jason was there at the opening, which is cool. So you actually did get to feel this space. Maybe Devon, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, Kelley, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was for most of its life a storage unit, and then in the past, I forget the exact year this happened, but not so many years ago, PRS's first contributing artist named David Orr, I think, really sort of led the way on making this into a gallery, and it began with a group show, which is part of why I love that we have a group show as well. But Kelley, correct me if I'm wrong on that, but it is here she comes, I think.
Yeah, PRS hosted a lot of classes here, workshops. And so those were going to be like additional offices and classrooms. And then it did become a storage unit at one time. And you're absolutely right, David, or had the vision to turn that into an art gallery. So we have him to thank for that.
Thank you. Yeah. So now it's, a storage unit of a different sort, which is a gallery, and very selective. So I'm glad you shouted out the space. It was also special to have you and Yuri there to install in person and go through that process as well. So I like thinking of it as a church cave.
Yeah, I feel like part of the intention was, for me, it was an offering towards that. I mean, maybe a first draft of how do you make any space feel a little bit like a church cave, and how do you create the conditions where people maybe are more willing to invite a certain kind of reverie that is allowed in church spaces, or some, things where you're not trying to conceptualize what's going on, because I think a lot of the work in the show, it's easy to be like, oh, this feels like hard to relate to. It's very abstract. But I feel like once you drop into a little bit of a sense of wonder and a little bit of sense of reverie and that kind of awe space, the pieces start to work on you a lot like an icon would in a church, or a lot like just the presence of spirit does if you're allowing that, instead of being like all up in here like, why did they make that line so long or something? And I love that. I don't know, I want to practice ways where we make places together that allow for us to just keep reverie alive.
Yeah, and I think, installing this show was very fun and creative, and involved little moments of selection in that spirit, I think. Where do things go? What do you want to see upon entering the church? Well, the most golden thing for sure, the treasure vase, but then when you exit, you might see the smaller vase above the door, which was Heidi's choice. And I love that too, because it is this little bit of mystery, or you can tell there's something sacred about that decision and that place, and something mysterious. So yeah, I don't think the pieces give a lot of answers, which means they are very open to all sorts of means of relating to them. So thank you, Jason, for pointing that out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I also thought it might be fun for if any of the artists want to sort of ask some questions of each other, but we can also open it up to everybody to jump in. And then I'm sure we have other thoughts, and you can just take it from there for the next close of the hour, I think.
Yeah. And if there's, if you are tuning in and you want to ask anything specific to an artist, you can either put it in the chat, or you can just speak up and unmute yourself and offer your thoughts or questions. I think that we can roll into that as we're talking. But one of the things that I was also thinking about a lot, which maybe hasn't come out yet in what we've discussed so far, is a lot of these pieces have a lot of wall text. Like, we haven't quite talked about this relationship between the kind of sacred austereness to some of them, the presence of the work, and then the languaging helping people to relate. So if you're in the space, you can also get really up close and read a lot of the material specificity or the story behind it. So like the treasure vases, there's a big list of all the earth matters that are inside these vases for people to guide them a little bit closer to the work, which I think is really interesting. There's a lot about the relationship between language and the aesthetic in the show that I haven't quite figured out what it's about. If anyone wants to chime in how language was important to them or not in describing their work, or I feel like that's an interesting piece for me too.
Mm-hmm. I have something to say. For me, when I think of place and having a sense of a robust connection to the place where I live, or if I'm if I'm engaging in something in which it's not only the place that I live, but wanting to bridge connections to other places. I was thinking about it today, how connected to the practice of writing poetry, that for me, what is of utmost vitality is to have a living dialogue, like to be in touch with, and part of this performance project I'm working on now is to try to really, like, to the utmost degree, create living dialogues with the mountain, the birds, the different beings who live around me, and have them be, different from thinking about birds or thinking about mountains or reflecting upon the history of, really making the central intention to relate and have almost this familial connection to the world that I live in immediately, and then, extending radially. And I was thinking the other day how, in terms of language and modes of communication, I was thinking about how we like revere nature and say like, oh, nature is so precious, so holy, so beautiful. Oh, our sacred earth. And like, yes, all of that is true to the utmost. But then another part of me was like, is the sacred this sense of reverence out of an absence of my living dialogue, in the way where like you talk to your family members who you love, and you're like, hi mom, hi dad, and like there's sort of a casual relationship because you're in touch. And I was like, well, is this sort of exalted form of communication with nature out of the absence of that way of like, oh, hi bird, hi, plant that I see, hi rock. And so that's just one sort of angle that I've been thinking about in terms of language, but also like modes of communication.
Yeah, may I respond to that? Alana, I love what you're saying. I was thinking about what Cordy said about the pathology of metaphor and the necessity of the reanimation of matter. And just for me, that too is sort of what the meaning is. There is an exchange of dialogue, not just going out, but also coming back. And yeah, having it be intimate and casual and conversational. And I think I wanted to pose to the group sort of, I feel as though that is what we're doing in this show, is that we're speaking and receiving actual communication. I was thinking about a piece that I was working on this last winter, where I was on a beach, and I had decided that I wasn't going to use a mortar and pestle to grind my pigments. I was just going to work with the rocks that were there. And I entered thinking that I needed to look for those rocks. Like I would have to sort of scour the beach to find the perfect rocks. But I found that I could sit anywhere, and as soon as I needed a rock that was sort of like a mortar and a rock that was like a pestle and had a really nice flat bottom, I would just kind of go like this. I would just reach out and they would be there. And to me, that was like a receiving of the communication. So it was an exchange, and it was really powerful. And yeah, that's just everything you just said about the sort of distance of reverence versus the close intimacy of casual conversation feels like it's so much a part of that reanimation. So yeah, I guess I wonder if anyone else has words or gestures. I think that's what we're all saying, but
I kind of could I touch on it a little bit? Can you hear me? Am I here? Well, so like the idea, sort of like what Alana was saying, like talking a little bit about the birds and the mountains, but not necessarily talking about the bird or the mountain, but like the dialogue between things in nature, like what is like the idea of this interstitial space. This is something that informs a lot of like what my work is, which is a little bit different from what's in the show, but like my work on paper, the idea of it's dialogues between form. It's like it's the negative space between things. but not just like a two-dimensional negative space, but it's like it's the in between things that forms some of the more interesting paths of mystery, like the conduits for these these magical things to happen. Like there's like it's negating individuality of things and creating like a space for the mysterious things to happen. And it's sort of thinking also about like the space where, for example, the space that our art is being shown in. I think it'd be really cool if a bunch of pigment people got together and like said, okay, we're going to make a space, but it's not really going to be a space. It's going to be an informed space using our colors, or like using something, designing like a temple that is sort of like being informed by the shapes and things that are around us. Like place as communication, like, sort of like the place becoming the source of dialogue, like becoming the dialogue between things. It's all about blurred lines. I just love blurring lines with stuff in my work and in everything. But like, I just think that would be a really cool project. Maybe one day we can all get together and design a temple or something. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah, I also just want to quickly add about your works on paper for people that don't know. You've made these incredible pieces where that negative space is filled with like the living drawing of slime mold. You're watching slime mold move in space, and you've created the conditions for them to show us how to communicate with them. Like you built relationship. You tried oats, you've tried iron, you've tried to feed them, you've tried to cultivate, and it's just like a relationship with any other being, that you have to spend some of the time honoring and showing respect and listening, and then some of the time like asking, can I please do this with you? And your paper, they're just little 8x11 pieces of paper, but all of that is contained in them. So I just want to bring that up as a beautiful, I'm grateful that you talked about your other work too, because they're like little miniatures. They're like architectural drawings for a future temple. Ooh,
these are some Gordon guys in a jar. They could have been in the show.
This line of thinking too, if I can just add something. I was starting to think about this a bit when you were talking about your work, Thomas, that I'm certainly not the first person to put it in these terms by any means, but I still find it really interesting to think about the difference between earth and world. That world often seems to carry more connotations of human civilization, but it's also really hard sometimes to know exactly where nature begins and culture ends, and that seems to be a bit of what you're speaking to, Alana. And most of my work has to do with mythology the past few years. And the thing I find really intriguing endlessly about mythology is that it's always these changing of shapes and these changing of forms, or bodies into other bodies. And a lot of what I see in this show are instances of world changing into earth, and earth changing back into world, and matter turning into a drawing, a gun turning into ink, material becoming metaphor, and then metaphor becoming a material experience. And so I think that in-betweenness is really interesting, and I think can also underscore something that this show helped me learn, which is that I feel like the metaphorical also has a reality, and that maybe we don't have to be so, I don't know, maybe we can hold these things together a bit more than we're usually trained to do, because that seems like a sort of suffering. Sometimes it's very obvious that here's nature, here's culture, and we see that even more and more lately when nature is suffering from culture. But all of these, every act feels more and more to me like an ecological act, and trying to accord those two things. And I think this show has a lot of really beautiful instances of holding them together. So I just wanted to get that in there to appreciate that.
I also wanted to say, for this show, I had opportunity to write what this collaboration with Jason and what's this ink and what's this work for me in language. And of course, it was English. But my first language is not English. And it's always challenging. And then, of course, this beautiful conversation that I'm in, 1/3 I don't understand. I still don't understand, even though I lived in the States more than 25 years. But however, how I started to draw when I was a child is because I used to stutter when I was a child. And the communication, the drawing was the best communication that I can talk, I can speak more than the language, and I could communicate better. Then so many things that we share right now in this little box. We can share so many things beyond the language, but because of this English, the language is the kind of invitation, how we both engage and how we both interested in each other. And I was thinking, actually, I have the reason why I started to paint abstract painting from, I used to be commercial illustrator in Japan back in the days. But it's because after all my family passed away, I had opportunity to write my unconventional family's story, which is my childhood story in words. So I published the book of my childhood memoir when I was 29, which was still very early. But then now I'm thinking about if I write about my life again, which I want to write in English. Then now I'm back in Japan and I started to speak in Japanese, but my mix of the two different languages are very weirdly weaving together. And many people that I speak in Japanese, I cannot share as I can share with people here, and vice versa. So it's very interesting to communicate, that used to communicate with the other being beyond language, and think about, Rudy, we never spoke each other in language. But Rudy and I and this ink and we have shared so much, this heart to heart, soul to soul, beyond language. But still language is important. So I don't know. I'm kind of thinking about this weaving in and out language and beyond language, in between kind of thing. Where is the mute?
Yeah, I think I'm thinking about how Tilke was using her body like this and putting her two hands far out as kind of the extensive way of being in the middle of world and earth, or two kinds of language, or the language of the heart as kind of this connective, the heart and the hands being this connective way that we weave through these different, different worlds, different ways of bringing it down into the earthly body. And I think something Devon and I have talked a lot about in this show too, in particular, is like, I'm very much into being on the earth. I'm very much into this process of grounding into the earth, being in love with the heart of the earth. I feel like strategically it's really important for our species to put their head back in the sand, like actually put it in the sand, and not to be stargazing. I mean, space gazing. that's just something that I feel strongly about. But Devon's an amazing collaborator in this way, and because she sometimes said, well, like, I don't want to be on the earth some of the time. Like, I feel like I can feel my body not wanting to be here. And you could speak to that part, but there's this dialogue too in this kind of way that we can think with being on earth and you working with earth, but also a part of us is wanting to leave the earth sometimes, or maybe is already like in the process, say with you, Yuri, like a little part of your body was maybe, moving in a different direction. And so Devon, do you want to add any pieces to that?
Yeah. I mean, usually my MO is to love my feet in the ground and to feel very connected to aesthetic sensibilities and to earth and I do deeply love that. But then there are moments, depending on what someone is going through, where I'm deeply interested in not being here, or like it's very hard. Being a body and being on earth is very difficult sometimes. So I think that's just, I guess it's just sort of a question that comes up when you, I don't know. It's sort of, it's not a superficial, contrasting question. It really is, when do we need to go to, or, that's what the imagination is for at the very least. And so I think, these pieces for me certainly act that way. Some of them, looking at Onya's painting, I can be elsewhere while still being here. I think that's something that's nice about sharing experiencing anybody else's art, is you are moved into a new sense of a new world that you didn't have to create, but that you can experience. So yeah, I'd love to hear anyone else talk about that relationship of whether you want to escape or whether you enjoy being pulled away from the earth sometimes too, or yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd like to talk about that. I think it's really kind of cool. We're talking about space gazing and things. It's like, we can look onto the earth and see all these amazing processes that happen because of space, because a meteor impact, or water from comets. It's like there's like all this, like, what's out there, what's out in space. It's like we're standing on space, we're standing on like this record of what happened in space. Like, and I think about what I love this metaphor about, like, so this, it's not a metaphor, it's real. But like the fact that like the oxygen from the earth blows over from solar winds and collects on the moon and is rusting the poles and turning them red. Like, there's that that's a beautiful thing. That's like, it is earth. It's earth. It's still earth, but it's like a little breath of earth moves on through space. It's like, it's I don't know. It's neat. I sort of think I was, what always grounds me is like an idea of like literally grounds me is like the idea of like laying on my back and looking up at the sky and just imagining myself on this little ball that's just spinning around, and I'm looking out and I'm breathing out, like my air is going into the air and the air is going out into space. It's like we're on this little steaming ball of stuff that's throwing itself out there. Earth's going out everywhere in space, and space is impacting Earth. It's all Earth, right? Kind of. I don't know.
Yeah. There's shared elements between the planets, and it makes sense. We think of them archetypally as almost different personality types. Like this one has a lot of iron, or whatever, and Earth has a lot of whatever carbon. But I agree. I think it can be very, very grounding to take that macro view, and I don't always feel that way. Usually I like the more intimate view, but it's such a wonderful thing to remember that we're a part of a much bigger thing. So yeah, thank you.
I guess I'd like to just say really quickly in response to that I think that being grounded on Earth and being able to enter space imaginatively is much more exciting to me than the sort of clunky physical, let's get our bodies to Mars. And that's really valid, that so much of the sort of the mythology of imperialistic culture is around this idea of getting our bodies out into space. And I have kind of a revulsion when I think of that, but I want to go. So when I heard the question was asked, do you ever want to leave Earth? My response to leaving Earth physically is no, but my response to leaving Earth imaginatively and psychically based on a really solid connection to Earth is really different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anyone else, or maybe another line of questioning?
And we have, I think we only have 10, maybe 10, 15 minutes left. So if the audience, if there's anything you'd like to ask any artist specifically, raise your hand or put it in the chat, and they're here for you. So we're here for you if you want to. And yeah, I think there's, if no one, I mean, does anyone else want to continue down this line before I start exploring other directions? Because there's so much in this particular relationship about how do we form. I mean, for me, it's about how do we have more Earth empathy on some level, whether that means imaginatively feeling into the Earth as a body moving in space in a collaboration with several other celestial bodies. Does that help you empathize with the Earth as a mortal planet? Does putting your hands in the dirt and working really intimately help you empathize with what's going on, and therefore like have a deeper empathy for your own participation, a greater capacity to work in relationship with other beings, with the birds and the mountains and each other and the microbes in your body? And for me, I think all of these are ways that we can deepen connection through our art practices help us do that because of their imaginative power, their creative power, and the ability to make imaginative places where we're like co-constructing alternative futures. I don't know, I think all of this is so healthy in general. Like this is the part of the healing process is being able to just share these spaces of working on this together, right? I mean, maybe there's something more to be said about that, or that's just something that I'm interested in holding space with everybody here. Like, there's so many ways to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and ways of sharing our individual, personal way that is for us. I'm really inspired. Each of you, I sort of asked you to be in the show for that reason, because you have such an intimate, specific way of letting us into your particular power for empathize, like staying here. Whether that means going away a little bit and coming back, whatever. It's just like you have a creative centers that I feel like I can enter into and be in dialogue with, which is so generous. You know, a lot of people are very closed off in their work, and I love that. So maybe if no one else has more to say, we can also kind of start winding down. And
yeah, I do think that even the goings away are ultimately for the sake of deeper empathy for the experience of being here. And and I mean, anytime I have been gardening or whatever it is, just touching the earth is deeply, literally grounding and emotionally grounding. And I think I was just thinking about the image of pottery. I did try to make some pottery with my dad's wild clay and commercial clay, and I couldn't do either. But it was an amazing empathy with earth material, because you do have to center it literally, which I couldn't do, and then make space and expand it and try to work with it. embodying those images is really important and inherent, I think, to spending any bit of time with, you know, like as children we're drawn to making things out of mud or whatever. I think it is a very earthy and a very imaginal empathy at the same time. And again, everyone has that in this show. But yeah, we can wind it down however we like. I don't know. Do you have ideas for that, Heidi?
Just gonna let it sit here for a minute, and I'm just gonna say, I think, thank you to everyone. And if there's, I'm just gonna offer an imaginal experience, which is that I've been imagining every piece in this show in conversation with each other behind our backs, sort of like the actual elements of these pieces are in dialogue with each other. And I think I've been especially thinking about that a lot with the treasure vases, whose intention, and Alana, you could speak to this if you want, is to essentially magnetize everything around it and to amplify its capacities. And so I feel like part of the show is every one of these pieces here is magnetizing one another, amplifying what is possible, and giving, I feel like we could all take away, every artist can take away a little bit more like creative energy. Maybe if this is nourishment just in terms of being in relationship, like having these pieces unconsciously doing stuff, which I always imagine in my own ochre studio, the rocks are always like very busy doing stuff and I don't have to know about it. You know, I don't need to be part of that conversation sometimes. It's like not my job to actually get involved in every single participation of every single creature around me, but let these non-humans do a little, like, respect that they're doing activity on our behalf too. Yeah.
I love that positive sense of talking behind our backs. It's like giving backing is nice.
Yeah. Yeah. More talking behind our backs. Let's let
I like that idea too. I like the idea of things just operating, creating a congress of things. I would just like to say I am really very thankful to Heidi and Devon and putting the show together and thinking of me incorporating some of my work in it. And I just want to say thanks. You guys are really cool and amazing. And I really would like to just see every one of you guys in the flesh too. It's always so frustrating to just see postage stamp size people on my screen when I just want to, like, you know, grab you. But I want to say that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all. Definitely all of your work has changed my world. And yeah, especially of course Heidi. We've been dear friends and collaborators for 20 years. And so yeah, I just want to thank her for really bringing this group together, and also for putting together the images of the show today, because I love that we got to move through it, the exhibit, especially for everyone that hasn't been able to be there in person. So thank you, Heidi.
Thanks to all of you. And I think we might try to even maybe put a little bit of something together for everyone in a printed form that we will share by the nice postal mail at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sending love. Thank you to everyone who came to participate. Thank you for everyone who was here just listening. I really want to honor your presence, and I hope everyone has an incredible rest of their day, morning, evening. And thank you.
Thank you all so much. Yeah, the show will now go and become Earth again in a couple of weeks. So that's a good thing too. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kelley.